Hello, everyone. Welcome to our interview series for COOP Dialogue. The ICA Asia Pacific office started COOP Dialogue in 2021 with a view to look at an issue of relevance to cooperatives in the Asia Pacific region, bring in diverse perspectives, and have a dialogue with members. COOP Dialogues have focused on the cooperative statement of identity, innovation, climate action, and contribution to the sustainable development goals. We are planning to come out with the 5th edition of COOP Dialogue in November to coincide with the 16th ICA-AP Regional Assembly in Manila. The first regional assembly was held in 1995. So 28 years have passed since, and we felt that this would be a good time to reflect on the regional assemblies, the purpose, the issues it has addressed, and how we see it moving ahead. This we are doing by going through the archives that we have, getting perspectives from cooperators who have attended the assemblies, and talking to key leaders. We have with us today one of the key leaders, Sylvia Paraguya. Sylvia is the Chief Executive Officer at NATCCO, the National Confederation of Cooperatives. NATCCO is the biggest federation of cooperatives in the Philippines, with around 5.1 million individual members coming from 812 co-ops and NGOs, who together have a combined asset of more than 150 billion pesos. My information may be a bit dated. It may have grown. So Sylvia, maybe you can add to that.
Yes.
Sylvia has been working with the cooperative movement and development NGOs for more than 3 decades. 28 years of which has been with the cooperative movement. She has been the CEO of cooperative federations for more than 2 decades. She was the chairperson of CODE NGO, the biggest coalition of NGO networks in the country, and is presently also the chairperson of the Network Consolidated Cooperative Bank, a consolidation of 6 cooperative banks where NATCCO is the strategic third-party investor. Sylvia is the coordinator of the Philippines Cooperative Affiliates, the network of ICA members who have come together to host the 16th ICA-AP Regional Assembly and related events. Sylvia, thank you very much for agreeing to the interview today. Let me begin by thanking you and ICA members who have done all the groundwork and in fact are continuing to do it for the Regional Assembly. We are all very excited and are looking forward to being in Manila. Let me begin by asking you this question. The Philippines hosted the ICA-AP Regional Assembly in 2002, and this was for the first time. Now, as the host country for the 16th ICA-AP Regional Assembly in 2023, more than 2 decades have passed. So how does it feel to be organizing the Regional Assembly again? And as you just mentioned, 2003 was also your first Regional Assembly. So what are your personal impressions having attended a Regional Assembly since 2003?
Thank you, Balu. Thank you for the confidence that I can respond to the questions that you're raising. 2003 was the first time I attended the ICA-AP Assembly. I'm really wondering now because I'm the overall coordinator and we have so many members in the Philippines right now. It's like 10 and there's an upcoming one. In 2003, it was just like NATCCO handling the ICA-AP. But at the time, NATCCO was still tertiary so that it worked with several member regional federations. So at the time, well, NATCCO is the overall member of ICA. NATCCO was helped by the member regional federations. Right now, NATCCO has transformed to become 2-tier, but there are already other members from the Philippines. I think we're now totaling 10. So I really wondered how did they handle the General Assembly at that time, or how was it financed at that time? Because I would imagine NATCO was small at the time. It was like less than $3 million. And right now we are, well, we're big in a sense, but I would not claim that we are the largest, because the insurance group would have more members than us. I would say that we have the widest array of services, and right now NATCO has 900 member cooperatives with membership of 7.5 million individuals, and the consolidated assets would be like half of the whole sector. Yeah, so and over time I see that cooperatives have grown, but specifically for the large and medium sizes. So what do I remember? Well, I remember that it was the vice president who was there who did the keynote. I cannot even remember if I was the MC, or I don't know if I had a part. I think I had a part in the program. So I'm excited. I'm telling myself, oh my God, what should we do in 2023, so that when they're asked 10 years later, they'll tell us something that they remember during the ICA-AP General Assembly.
Okay, thank you for that. And it's very interesting that, like I mentioned last week, we spoke with Dr. Yadav, and when I asked him a similar question, he said he remembers that then the whole Asia Pacific cooperative movement was small in size. There weren't as many members. It was much more manual process, much more of a smaller size even, but then a lot of enthusiasm. And you seem to also reflect that the size, it may not have been as big, but then the enthusiasm and representation was there. Happy to hear that last time the vice president attended, and we do hope that we will have a similar presence this time also. So going back at the last regional assembly, when it was held in the Philippines, the theme was cooperatives past 10 years and 10 years ahead. So now, 20 years later, what kind of changes have come about in the Philippine cooperative movement?
Yeah, if I tried to look at the timeline, so 10 years before 2003, that was the time when we had the party list system of the Philippines. So that NATCO decided to organize the COOP NATCO party list. So that was 1998. And since then, other party lists are also there. So that up to now, we have COOP party list in Congress, looking at the legislative requirements for cooperatives and ensuring that we get the right support that we wanted. If I look at the figures right now, the number of cooperatives seem to stay around 20,000, Balu. Because before 2003, we were looking at more than 60,000 of cooperatives. But when the law was passed in 2008 and there was a re-registration, it was down to 17,000. And then it increased to 20. But right now, 2023, it's still at 20,000. And out of the 20,000, you have around 10,000 operational. So really, there is a challenge here, because more than 85% of the cooperatives are micro and small. And you have the 15% large and medium. And these large and medium cooperatives hold around 90% of the members, hold 90% of the assets. So if you use the Pareto principle, it will look like that you have to focus on these cooperatives, because that is where you should protect the money of the people. That is where you will see more members. On the other hand, with the micro cooperatives, you need to do mergers and consolidation, but it's not easy, because you cannot, merging them does not necessarily mean that they'll be strengthened. You still have to do a lot of intervention so that you're able to grow these cooperatives. But interesting, because there are small cooperatives which are not really financially viable, but they have very good products. Like, for example, they can be winners in terms of coffee. So how do we assist these cooperatives with very good products and impacting on the farmers, indigenous peoples, and yet their capacity is not the same as the others? No, so there are a lot of changes. We from 2003 up to now, we already have the new law RA 95/20 in 2008, and that is now under review. We recently have the CDA charter, and I always would like to note that in the current CDA law, it specifies that the board of directors should be coming from the whole sector. So it is there that the sector should be able to endorse the board of directors, and for us that's very important. Last week, in fact, one of the members of ICA-AP, the one under the Union of Labor Service Cooperative, was appointed as a board. And another representative from the finance cluster who is with the Savings and Credit Cooperatives was also appointed as a board. So we welcome that new developments where we see people really coming from the sector being appointed as board of directors. Yeah, so I think a lot of things that are happening, but I'm seeing that the growth is largely with the large co-op and the medium size. They have more than doubled in terms of membership. They have more than doubled in terms of their assets. So I am comparing the 2011 figures with 2023. The number of cooperatives is around 20,000, but the assets have more than tripled and the members has doubled. So how I wish that 7 years from now, as we reach SDG 2030, I don't know if we will reach 20 million members in the sector, so that we'll be able to count ourselves as a major contributor of the development of the country. So that would be partly what I'd like to share, Balu, in terms of what has happened. But there are still other things like past 2003, Balu, that's the time we saw all the types of disasters in the country. The floods, the earthquakes. So before 2003, I don't think we discussed climate change. But right now, it's imperative because Philippines is #1 in terms of risk, most disaster-prone country in the world. So this is a very important discussion in the Philippines on how we can make sure that we are, at least you future-proof the cooperatives against these disasters.
Great. I think all important things in terms of one, having political representation. I think co-ops have political representation. The assets with cooperatives have grown, members have grown, issues are being also tackled. So there is, and right now, from what you said, I think the board of directors is to the CDA. That's where the co-op members have been appointed. Is that right?
Yeah, before we called them board of administrators, now they are called board of directors. And the current law of the CDA specifies that the board of directors, in a sense, has to be coming from the sector or endorsed by the sector.
Right, and you mentioned about the Sustainable Development Goals, and as you know, the cooperatives from the Philippines have been mentioned in the voluntary national report, which the Philippines has submitted. So there is also reflection about the contribution of cooperatives, both in the VNRs and in the national strategy documents. The national development plans also mention about cooperatives.
Yeah.
So I think it fits well with the next question. The theme that we chose this year is cooperatives are common agenda. And you just mentioned about the Sustainable Development Goals. 2023 happens to be the midpoint. The SDG started in 2015 with a window of 15 years. So 2030 is the target year. Now we are at the midpoint. So in September, the high-level political forum was held where there was a lot of this stock taking on how have we performed on the SDGs. There was a lot of backsliding because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the wars, but we still need to look ahead. So there was discussions around that. And that's the reason we felt it would be also good to look at, for cooperatives, what should be our common agenda. And you did mention earlier in terms of in the Philippines, the bigger ones seem to be growing, and they are few in number compared to the large, small and micro, which seem to be lagging in certain sense. But then as cooperatives, what do you think should be the common agenda which we should be looking at? Climate is something that you mentioned that cuts across. It doesn't matter whether you're a big cooperative or a small cooperative, impact of climate change is felt across. So climate is one, but where are the other common agenda points that you think we should be looking at?
I think clearly the participation of women and youth. We know that sustainability of the cooperatives will also lie on the coming in of the new generation to the movement. Women, because it's like almost half of the population, they should be there. In the Philippines, it looks like we have made some headways, but still we need to see more women in the leadership. In other countries, I can imagine that there are more challenges, but in the Philippines, we are a bit advanced in terms of gender equality, but that does not mean that we stop, because if you dissect it, while there are in our data right now, for example, the women members will be 57%, but if you go up to the leadership, especially the chairperson, then that ratio is not reflected. Maybe at the management level, there would be, I am not sure, but more women at the management level. But in the leadership, especially the chair, the 57 at the bottom is not reflected in the leadership. So we need to see how we can ensure participation of women. We need to see how we can ensure participation of the youth. And when we look at the youth, the challenge that we have to face is the digitalization. How do we make the co-ops attractive to the young, especially that these young are very techy? So the situation is maybe you have leadership which are old and you have the members young. How do we make sure that the co-ops become a good place for the new generation?
Yeah, I think very important points: climate, looking at inclusion, diversity, women and youth, and technology. Three very important points. And interestingly, the three breakout sessions which we are planning for Cooperative Forum looks at these three issues: climate, leadership, inclusion, both women and youth, and technology, and what is the kind of impact it's going to have. But what we also have is an overarching thing which unites cooperatives is our cooperative identity. And
Yes.
so how do we look at the identity, and how do we promote is something which we are also going to look at. So given that we've looked at the past and looked at what kind of challenges and issues are there, how do you and your fellow cooperators, I'm sure you must be having discussions in terms of looking ahead, what is the kind of future that we envisage for cooperatives in the Philippines, and what steps are you all taking in that direction?
So if you look at the Philippine cooperatives, most of us are into savings and credit operations. That would be like 85%. So we would like to see that cooperatives are able to adhere to standards and make sure that the operations is such that the monies of the members are also protected, because these are hard-earned money. And very strong need for digitalization for the financial cooperatives. At the same time, we'd like to see the development of more cooperatives in the other clusters. Right now, in the current law, there are 6 clusters of cooperatives. Finance would be the biggest. Then you have the agriculture, you have the education and advocacy, you have the public utilities, the human services. So, and then, yeah, then the consumer marketing. So we would, in the previous meetings that we have, because there is the National Alliance of Cooperative created, which is the consultative and coordinative arm of the regulatory body. These are not registered, but this is recognized as the consultative arm. So there were discussions on how we can develop the different clusters and how we can have strong federations in this cluster. How do we have unions advocating for education and advocacy? So a lot of work to strengthen the federations, but we know, Balu, that's not easy to do. That's not easy to do. Right now in the finance cluster, there would be like 4 of us who are doing financial work, providing lending to the members. That would be MASPEC, PCF, NATCCO, and I would see that the insurance group, they're a bit advanced. You have 2 big insurance groups in the country, the CLIMS and CISP. And there is the creation of the COOP Health Mutual Fund, so that instead of getting your health maintenance card from private providers, you get this from the COOP Health Mutual Fund. So they're actually increasing the number of their accredited hospitals, so that if you are into the system, then you will have access to health facilities. So many plans on how you upscale, because you have housing cooperatives, you have water service cooperatives. There are a lot of initiatives, but I know that it is not easy to grow the federation, especially that you have to rely on yourself. What is needed now among the cluster is how to collaborate across the cluster. So we would like to see how the finance cluster can finance the other operations, because anyway the insurance also insures regardless of the cluster. So we're advocating that we will be allowed to cross the other clusters, and there can be partnership in strengthening cooperatives, because even if cooperatives have different technical component, there are common aspects of the co-ops. How do you do accounting? How do you do internal control, the governance, etc.? So I think there can be collaborations across the cluster.
Yeah, I think, thank you. All very important points. Having strong federations helps in representation. Cooperation among cooperatives helps us to scale up. And of course, trying to use, very important, you mentioned that health. I think in almost all the countries, while we talk about youth, aging is becoming a big issue. Members in our own cooperatives are aging. So how do we look at the whole issue about cooperatives addressing the needs of members as they grow? The health issues are also, I think, very important, looking at both social and service type of cooperatives. So I do hope we're looking forward to be there in the Philippines and hearing about all these different initiatives. You've done a great work as so far as the coordinator of the PCA and in ensuring that all the preparations are going on smoothly. So personally, what are you looking forward the most when it comes to this regional assembly?
Maybe, I don't know if what is there which we can do at the Asian level, Asia Pacific level. Although we know that we have initiatives like our climate action program, we're trying to, in a sense, a little bit of standardization across, right? We have a process, we have a manual how to do this across. I know that you have a project with coffee. Can we really look at some products which are good and which can cross, and then we'll see how this can benefit the members. Digitalization still would be an issue for me, for the financial cooperatives. We are caught between the discussion of, is it possible that there is a core banking system which can be shared across Asia Pacific, so that the source codes are in a bit owned by us but used by so many around Asia Pacific, rather than each of us individually developing some systems. There are openings for us, like for us, the central bank has allowed us to enter, but it's not easy to enter. And if you're there, then you can look at cross-border transactions if that is allowed also in the other countries. But we need to still continue to learn from each other. There could be good laws in other parts of Asia Pacific which can be shared and benefit from the others.
Yeah, on the first point in terms of products, this is the first time we are trying to organize a trade fair where we are requesting members from a few countries outside the Philippines to come and display their products. We also have members from the Philippines setting up their stalls. So I think that will be a good opportunity for knowing what are the different types of products and what are the opportunities for us to collaborate. But definitely some of the other issues mentioned are at a regional scale, which are important in terms of how do we look at cross-border kind of engagements, be it financial or be it in terms of products and services. And I do hope that some of these things can be covered during the assembly. But again, at a personal level, what are you looking forward to?
I hope we'll be able to offer you an exciting ICA-AP forum and General Assembly in the Philippines. Now my task is to check what to do so that it becomes memorable.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be a memorable one. So Sylvia, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a pleasure talking with you and getting your views. Always very interesting and very informative having a conversation with you. So thank you very much. Please do thank all our members and staff at NATCCO, especially Lathalet and team. They've all been doing tremendous work. So we are looking forward to being in Manila and interacting with you all. So again, thank you so much for taking the time.